Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Board Game Geek Show for December 21st, 2018. I'm your host, Scott Alden. It's our last show of the year, so we got the whole crew here, or most everybody. My lovely co-hosts, as usual, Steph Hodge,
Hi.
Lincoln Damerst, W. Eric Martin, and Rodney Smith. How's everybody
doing?
Hey,
everyone.
Hey, guys.
How are you? Doing well, thank you.
Doing great.
Is everybody excited for the year to kind of come to a close and go to 2019?
Sure. I guess right now it's snowing outside. It's forecasting 5 inches. So the next several months are just shoveling. That's all I'm doing, just shovel all the time. That's my life for the next few months.
You should get one of those flamethrowers, Rodney. Have you seen the guy that does his driveway with the flamethrower?
I have seen that. That's a good idea. I need to at least do it once.
Call Elon Musk and see if he'll send you one. I'm sure the promotion with the vlog would be spectacular. Cool. So let's jump right into BGG news. The big news of the month for us is that we're running the Board Game Geek annual fundraiser support drive. We're in the thick of things, so we're coming up on the end of the year. It's doing really fantastically. We really appreciate all the support. It's definitely something that keeps us going, and we really can't do it without the users of the website. It's just truly spectacular. So we have a few days left here at the end of the year. You could jump in and get your 2018 badge and your patron badge support banner. So if you can support us at the $15 level, you get that badge. And if you support us at the $25 level, you can disable the ads on BGG. Although I don't know why you would, because those ads are spectacular.
It's like the few ads I ever see in my life that I actually want to see. They're about something I care about.
Yeah, we try to get all board game related ads on BGG. It's not, very rarely do we fill with the kind of the garbage junk ads, and unfortunately we don't have any control what appears there. We can try to filter them, but we do our best to keep it all board games all the time.
Seems like the new motto for the site.
I think the other reward you get from it is just that good feeling. Because, look, I'm on that site all the time. I'm sure many, many people are as well, every day, day after day. Because you see what happens when the site goes down. Everyone panics. It's pandemonium. Everyone's trying to figure out where to go to get their board game info. So, obviously, the site has value to people. If you're able to chip in a few shekels, it really makes a big difference.
And don't forget, you can support us by buying through the BGG store as well. There's lots of great stuff on there.
Yeah, we have the Board Game Geek store. We've stocked it full of nice gifts for people to give, like bit bowls and card holders and deluxe bits and all kinds of promo cards that Rodney's promo cards are now in the store, if people didn't know. So all the ones with him and Pep on them, and like they're all themed to you, aren't they, Rodney?
Yeah, I think most of them are. I think there's a couple that are sort of Pep, and there's some with the kids, but they're all kind of watch it played related in some way. We tried to have promos that tied back to games we had played on the show, so that people would have some kind of thematic connection to them. And we had some at the different conventions, and I think you had some overflow from that, which are up on the store.
We also have Steph Hodge's fabulous gamer photography calendar for 2019, so the time is running out to get that. You definitely want that on your desk or wall before the end of the year, typically.
For the new year.
For the new year, yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yes.
Cool. So in other news, BGG Spring registration is underway, and there's still plenty of spots left. We're having a little bit of an issue with the hotel registration, but it's coming along. I actually had a meeting with the hotel yesterday, and they are debugging. They had tested their new system, but they need to fix a few more things before we launch it live. So just, if you register for the show, and you're almost guaranteed to get a hotel room. I mean, there might be a slight chance that hotel could sell out, but I really don't suspect that will happen for spring. So just bear with us with the technical problems with the hotel for the registration, but you can get your ticket at any time.
I can't wait. A BGG Spring last year was my first time attending it, and I wasn't sure what to expect because I know BGG Con is like the big show, right? But I loved it. It was fantastic. It was in some ways maybe even a little more intimate because it's a little smaller, but all kinds of time to play games, very easy to find people and hang out and do things. It was just, and of course, don't forget the crazy Dexterity Hall with all the wild games out there too. So just a really good time, and a giant library. You really can't go wrong. If you're looking for a convention and you're in the nearby area or you don't mind traveling, I highly recommend it.
We're also going to do the charity auction, not auction, but charity flea market again this year. Last year, if you remember, we sold 2,000 games for charity. It all went to Cafe Momentum. Michelle just talked to Chad Hauser, the guy who takes care of that charity. stewards it, and he's excited, and we're trying to figure out potentially some stuff to do with him, where he's going to come out and talk a little bit about the charity. He's to talk to the guy and understand the charity is really special. So if I can get him to come out and hang for a little while, I hope, based on his schedule. Obviously, the restaurant never shuts down, so he has to kind of be there all the time. But all that stuff is going to happen again in spring, and we're going to have... So we got rid of the first 2,000 games in our storage. We'll probably have at least another 1,000, maybe more. We're constantly cycling through our old backlog of games in storage. We need the space, so I think you can get some very good games.
And I need games, so this works.
Yes. So the games will start getting newer in age for next year.
Oh, wow. There were so many great things in that sale. I came home with far too much.
Yeah.
Me too.
It was sad to let them go, too, because I was kind of doing a little bit of thinking about how BGG started and looking at the first 500 games in the database just by titles. And I remember owning almost all those games. And those were some of the games that were from my original collection that I'd put into the BGG library that eventually got sold in the flea market. So a little bit of nostalgia going through those games and seeing everything oh yeah, I remember that. I remember we played that. But so my nostalgia is your gain. You get cheap. We'll probably I'm not going to announce the pricing scheme yet because I haven't really decided. I have to look at everything, but probably going to be pretty cheap. Good games, pretty cheap.
There you go. I think it worked out really well last year, just with the setup that you had, where things got cheaper as the days went on, and of course, all the great stuff got picked. But then later on, you're just like, I will certainly take a flyer on this for $2 or whatever it was. I'll try things out.
Yeah, I think the cheapest we got was $5. I can't remember actually. How was it? $10 on the first day, $5 on the second, and then I don't remember. 5 for 10. I don't know. Yeah, something. The prices
something
were
like
good, in my
that.
opinion.
And then at the end, it was fill a bag and just
take every. I was filling mystery bags.
Yes.
I walked around the room, and every game that I thought I could play, today, I just put in a bag. I would happy to play this game. I put it in the bag. So then I sold that bag, and I said, "There's at least $100 worth of games in here. Take it for $100," and people, of course, bought it. Cool. All right. So moving on to the next thing, we're in preparations for Nuremberg and Toy Fair. Eric, why don't you talk a little bit about what's happening there?
Yes, Lincoln and I will be attending the Spielwarenmesse fair in Nuremberg, Germany, where we will film what's coming from mostly German publishers, but publishers around the world in the first half of 2019. We will be attending the Festival International des Jeux in Cannes at the end of February, and we will live stream game demonstrations from that show. And that will be both game previews and game releases, because that fair has a bunch of both. Many publishers show things in advance. The French are very open, and they will just show things freely, even though it's coming out in 10 months. They'll be like, here it is now. We'll see what it looks like later. And so you get a real sneak peek at what's coming. So we're making preparations for that. I'll have a convention preview that goes live in early January that starts highlighting some of the games that will be shown at those events, as well as New York Toy Fair, which I'll stop in for a day like usual. Just survey things, see what's there. It's always sort of unusual what's going to be there. Never really know. And, it's just this window into the larger mainstream game market. And you see more and more hobby games sort of filtering in there. But at the same time, most of it is mainstream titles that we will not talk about on BGG, but are a big part of the game industry, like the recently announced Monopoly Pizza from Hasbro that is out now. There you go. Monopoly Pizza. Monopoly. Everything.
And I believe you guys are going for one extra day this year. Is that true?
We're going. Yes, we will be there live streaming Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah, we live streamed through Sunday, but Eric left. So it was us. We were freeforming on Sunday.
Yes. I did not realize we were staying through Sunday last year. So I had bought my ticket. Now we will be there through Sunday. I will be there.
Well, we were talking with
Matthew Dunstan
on that last day, right?
Yeah, a bunch of times. It was really fun.
And we also talked to Nadine in Essen, who is it safe to say she runs the show?
I think so.
This is her last year.
Yes.
from what I understand, the off, which is off can, for based on the movie festival, is gonna double in size. Did you hear that?
Crazy.
Yeah, they got to be in a different space because it was slammed.
Yeah, it's gonna be bigger in a bigger space. Yeah, and that's awesome. So, and that thing was massive, as I recall. You guys did a little special segment on that.
It was gigantic. It's amazing too, and it's super crowded.
Starts on Wednesday. The fair itself doesn't start till Friday. So it's a couple of extra days of just prototyping. And Thursday is all the professional days. So designers and publishers can go into the fair Thursday and we'll be broadcasting then. But yeah, the off will be running for 2 days longer than the show itself.
And am I crazy, or is this convention, is it a convention? Would you call it that, or a fair? Because it feels like it's so much under the radar in terms of my awareness of the big conventions.
I think it's mostly just because it is French. It is pretty much all French. All French publishers, mostly in French. I mean, many of the publishers that go there attend Spiel, and they go to, many of them now come to Gen Con, and so they have English speakers on staff. But at the show itself, it is really geared towards French audience.
Yeah, the public.
And yeah, it seems like it's becoming more international. I know Nadine Sewell is trying to make that effort of just part of BGG going there and highlighting what is there at the festival. And some publishers from outside France are coming to present games there. And it's been going on for decades. So it is weird that it's under the radar while also being very important to that market.
It might also be the largest game fair in the world, and no one really knows. The attendance was astronomical from what I understood.
It's free. It's free attendance.
And it's free.
Yeah, it's free to go.
Yeah, it's really weird that this thing exists in our board game world that doesn't... Yeah, it goes under the radar. Absolutely, Rodney. There's no better way to say it.
It sounds so bizarre. It's free?
Like,
what?
Yeah, it's free to attend.
This is crazy.
Yeah. All of the off stuff is registered too. Like, you can't just go there and grab a table. It's not open gaming. It is specifically designed to test new games. And every single table was occupied last year, and they're going to double the size. So that's just mind-boggling. So if you're a designer and you're in Europe, I don't know why you wouldn't go. It just seems like a no-brainer. Even in America, I mean, it's so hard to get playtesting in just anywhere. So obviously, like, France is a little bit of a trick to get to, but if you're really for this thing in the long term, you would probably figure out a way to get there.
Huh.
Yeah.
I need to brush up on my French. Sounds like a show that'd be quite interesting to go to.
Everybody speaks English there. I mean,
yeah.
It was very rare not to find someone.
Not everybody. Yeah.
Not everybody, but
everybody.
It's definitely, it's the international language, right? I mean, you can find someone that will eventually speak English if you just keep trying.
Oh, and Aldie, we're going to be doing our top 10 of the year, right? Coming soon?
That's right. We're going to live stream that. We don't know which day yet because we're working on our schedules, but we're going to do kind of like what we did for Essen, where we did our top 10 picks. We're going to do our top 10 games of the year.
That's exciting. Oh my gosh, there's so many good games.
It's going to be challenging. And you've played all the games, right? So I've only played a small subset, so I'm sure most of the ones I've actually played are probably going to be there. I might need to play a few more
10,
before.
so it's easy for you.
I've only played 10 games this year, so yeah, that's my 10. Done. Easy.
And I've played less than 10, so I could never do the list. It's perfect.
Cool. So check us out on Twitch for that. You can go to twitch.tv/BoardGameGeekTV. Click subscribe, click the bell, whatever, notify me. And when we go live, you'll get a notification and you can jump in the chat. We'll engage the chat and talk and stuff, and kind of our end of the year quick top 10.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. So we'll do that probably before the new year, maybe just after, depending on schedules.
It's not much released at the end of December usually, so
I still have a couple weeks to learn some more games, Eric.
Well, yes, you can play more, true, but there will probably not be new releases on the market there.
But there was like 1,000 that came out last month, right? So we kind of have to catch up.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
I'm almost there.
So let's move on to everybody's favorite segment. What have you been playing? Rodney, why don't you start?
Wow, okay. I'd be happy to start. Well, the game I'm going to talk about is one that I think it would be interesting to see kind of the reaction to because it's Gen 7. And this is a game in the sort of the Crossroads family like Dead of Winter was. but it's not Dead of Winter in space. It's not a retheming, I should say, of Dead of Winter simply transplanted to a new theme. It's a very different game, although it does carry over the idea of using dice as how you'll select actions in the game. But we're in space. I'll just briefly mention the theme because I think it's fascinating. The idea is you're on this interstellar journey from Earth, an exhausted Earth, to a brand new, hopefully, home planet. But unfortunately, it takes so long to get there that the people who leave Earth will not be the ones who arrive, and the people who arrive will never have seen Earth. And there'll be generations in between that will have never seen Earth or will never see the destination. And so you're one of those middle generations, and I think that's just kind of a fascinating idea as a theme. But so the idea is it's fully cooperative too. Unlike Dead of Winter, where you had a potential traitor, this one's fully cooperative, and it's a campaign game. So you're going to be playing a 7-episode campaign that unfolds in this plot book. Now, you've seen books like this from Plaid Hat before. If you've played Stuffed Fables or the new Comanauts that's releasing, it's this whole series of stories and branching paths. So when you play the first episode, the first couple of things that happen in that episode won't really branch off, but by the end of it, you'll be forced to make decisions that will take you in directions that you would not have gone if you chose something different. So every time you play the campaign, and I should be clear, it's fully resettable. You can reset it and play again. You can branch off and experience a different ending, a different outcome, and so on. And there's all these envelopes of hidden stuff, all these just goodies and things, right? And all of these, again, fully, like you can pull the seal off and it will reseal. There's all kinds of stuff in here. And so you'll unlock some, you might not unlock others. And so you have this mystery that's unfolding. And there's all these are just sort of stacks of cards with little card dividers. So as you play, new Crossroad cards will come out from here, new characters potentially. I don't know what's in here. I haven't looked because I'm not spoiling it for myself. But the one thing I think people might uncover is that the rulebook's not fantastic. And I think we'll hear some of that as more and more reviews come out. I think they tried to go with, I don't have the rulebook's over there. They tried to go with that format of like, hey, here's a couple of pages, this is the rules, the rest you can find in the rules reference. But really, the bulk of the rules are in that rules reference, and you're going to need to read that to really know what's going on. And unfortunately, there's a few printing errors. Now, they are compiling right now a frequently asked questions document and errata to help people avoid those issues. And just to plug a sort of a BoardGameGeek Watch It Play collaboration here, we put together a rules tutorial that covers everything correctly and doesn't have those mistakes in it. So you can watch the video, learn how to play, and just sort of ignore the rule book if you want to.
Cool. Yeah. Your overview just made me like super excited to play. I kind of have not been paying attention to it for some reason. It like went under my radar. So I'm whatever you just described there, I'm down to play that game.
I have to tell you, it kind of went under my radar too, because I just thought, okay, Dead of Winter in space. But once I saw that it was actually a very different game and the way it plays is different, it got me much more interested again. And yeah, that theme really sucked me in as well. I think this is one of the few campaign games that I'm going to try to play all the way through. I think I'm going to try to rope the family into it, and we're going to give it a go.
That sounds great.
Rodney Smith as Chris Pratt.
Does it have the crossroad mechanicism in the game where you, if some things will trigger based on certain situations?
Yeah, great question, because it does have it, but they've changed it in a way that I think people might like. So when there's a certain type of die that every player will have, it represents the officer on the team. And when you play the officer die, at the end of the turn, a crossroad card will then be drawn, and you will check to see if the trigger resolves at that time. And if it doesn't, it goes away. If it does, then it happens. So I don't even remember, but in Dead of Winter, you'd get the card, and then you have to remember what the trigger was the entire turn, and remember to trigger it if something happened. And this just simplifies that. Also, if it does trigger, it leaves the campaign entirely. So there's like, it'll just, the deck will keep thinning and thinning, although new things will come in. Also, you will add cards in based on the characters you're playing. So the crossroads become a little more theme relevant to what's happening in the game as you're playing. There's also no frostbite or whatever that die was that you'd roll and you could just instantly die. There's that's not there anymore.
There's no vacuum of space die.
There's no vacuum to get sucked up. I mean, there might be, but not through a die that you roll.
So do you get a random set of characters just like Dead of Winter?
Well, there's not as many characters. I believe it is 5 characters. Now, I haven't gone through the whole game, so I wouldn't be surprised if more things perhaps unlock as you play.
Yeah.
But it is a game, I should mention, a game for 3 to 4 players. It's a very precise play number. So if you have 1 or 2 players, you technically can't play it. Now, we played it 2-player, just having one person control 2 characters, but I'm not sure if that would hold up as you play through the rest of the campaign.
Gosh, I wonder if they're going to throw a trader mechanic in the middle of that game.
Me too.
That makes me wonder. With 2 players, if they can't play 2, I don't know. Okay.
Right.
Gen 7 sounds awesome. I'm excited. I think maybe Steph is excited because I know, Steph, you've been playing a thematic game.
So that sounds really cool. I mean, until you said what you just said about the trader, they're probably going to throw it in. I'm like, oh, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I don't know anything. I'm just
No, I know you don't know, but it makes sense what you said. So I just I was all excited. I'm like, okay, that sounds really cool. And then you said that. I'm like, oh, I don't like traders.
Don't let that turn you off because we don't know. I don't want to give the big game a bad taste already without even playing it.
Right next to me here, I have Holding On. What is it? The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr. So now this has been getting a lot of press since Origins when I first heard about it. And everybody's been talking about it. And so finally I have it because I got a BGG Con and that's exciting. So I've been playing through. We did the first 3 scenarios and it's really interesting. I mean, so I'm not really a thematic gamer. So the theme is... I've heard a lot of people compare the theme to the mechanics not exactly meshing very well, which doesn't bother me at all. So I just like the puzzle and trying to work with people to try and figure out how to best do the puzzles that you're trying to do in the game. So I don't know if you've had a chance to play it, but the first level is really easy and you're just trying to find the fragments of Billy Kerr's memory because he just had a heart attack and is in the hospital and he's trying to get back home, but he has to remember things and you're trying to help him remember things and keep him alive at the same time because you're playing the nurse team that's helping him. What's the word? His palliative health and his mental health.
Yeah. That means he's going to die.
Yeah, and you're just trying to not have him die.
Make it easy.
Not yet. So if he dies, do you play the scenario again to get to the next scenario? Or
yeah, so every scenario you can easily reset and replay. There's nothing I could go back and play 1, 2, or 3. Everything is reset every round. You're not really even carrying anything over to the next game that I found so far in the first 3 games. So you're really just resetting every time and you're doing a new mission, if you will, to try and help him stay comfortable through his, remaining days, if you will. So you're working, and it's probably best with 4 players, and I even think most people would agree with that. Like, somebody's playing the head nurse, and you're basically assigning shifts every day. So it's really cool, and I don't even like hospitals, so I usually don't play hospital games. So this is totally hospitals. Totally not something that would normally cross my table, but it's been getting so much good press and I had to know more, so I had to try.
Yeah, there were a couple of comments on the Spiel overview video where people are just like, why would I ever play this? This sounds like something I do not want to encounter. And it's like, well, that's you, yes, but plenty of people who were trying it at Origins were just in love with it. They love the whole idea of it. Just, I don't know. It's a different experience, and so it's not for you. But
it's interesting. I've done a lot of tutorial videos about a variety of different themes, and some with excessive amounts of murder and death and killing and all the rest of it. But it's this game of Holding On that has caused the most pushback from people that I've seen, going, "No, this is too much." I think it hits home probably for a lot of people who've experienced this in relatives or friends and that sort of thing. And it takes them to a place they can't fictionalize it. They can't separate themselves enough from it to be able to enjoy it. Whereas for other people, like you said, Eric, it's taking them to a place in a game they wouldn't normally get to go, and that's appealing in its own right.
Yeah, and so that even happened in my first game. We were playing with somebody who just had a relative get severely ill and pass away. So he was having a really difficult time with this, and he could have dropped out. And I would never, ever say, you need to play this game. I would never do that to anybody. It's definitely a deep theme that you can't just go into it hey, we're going to have a great time. Because you might not. I mean, it will connect differently with everybody, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an exciting trend in the board game world, that themes that aren't typically associated to board games are getting done, and they're getting exposure in public, and I assume you're positive about this stuff, right? You had fun playing the 3, otherwise you probably wouldn't have brought it up. So,
no, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to go ahead and play the rest of the scenarios and see what happens and see how it changes. I mean, if it was going to be the same every game to do the same kind of missions, but so in the 3 first missions, they're very different, and you have different strategies that you're doing, even though you're technically kind of doing the same thing, even though you're doing different things. I don't know if that makes sense, but you're still trying to save him with his heart, and you're still trying to find his memories, but there are different ways of doing it and working together to figure it out.
Okay.
So,
Got it. Yeah, that
it's
sounds
good.
cool.
I can't wait to play more.
So Lincoln, I know you've been painting a lot. Do you want to talk about that? And I know you've been playing stuff, so why don't you combine them together and give us an update?
Okay. Well, I have been painting the Shadespire. Actually, no, Nightvault, Warhammer Underworlds Nightvault set. I painted a quick paint with our friend Sebastian, who's been on the BGG show here before, and we did my set. And so now I'm doing Scott's set. I just finished the Stormcast Eternals. They looked really cool. They took probably about 12 hours, and I'm getting ready to do the Night Haunt next. We also been playing, and I'm excited because I'm really trying to get it back into being a regular thing where I will not sit for 7 hours and paint, but spend a couple hours every day trying to do it. And then I see Rodney's holding a Primaris Marine there. Is that what's going on?
Well, you're putting me to shame, because I've had these 5 or 6 Intercessor Space Marines sitting on my little painting nook for months, well, years now, actually. I started this a year or so ago. I've got it based in blue, a little bit of white highlighting, and I pulled them back out because I wanted to, just try to at least finish these 5 models. Well, in the last month since I pulled them out, I haven't made any progress, and instead I just bought another little pack of more models. So I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing, Lincoln? What's wrong with me?
Oh, dude, I'm inflicted too. I'm preparing to go to the store to purchase another one of these annual Marines, battle forces that they do. I think I'm gonna buy the Marines or the Adeptus Mechanicus. I'm not sure. I'm insane. I don't need to buy that stuff. Plus,
I think we're both insane.
I brought home.
If you saw Lincoln's backlog of Warhammer stuff, you would be like, yeah, you don't need to buy it. But I understand it. We're all part of the same.
Plus, I took all of Scott's Shadespire and Nightvault warbands that he has, and I'm going to paint those. So I've got things to paint. I really don't need it, but I keep thinking, I'm like, I really want to go get one of these sets. So I don't know. I'm a lunatic.
Well, you and I played Kill Team when we were at BGG Con, and it just made me think, I only have to paint 5 models. I'll have a whole team. I'll be done.
You have to.
Not so far.
It has to become a habit. It's really weird. But it's fun. I'm having a really good time. I have a great setup for it. We've also been playing a bunch of games for game night. The one that I'm going to talk about is Western Legends, which is actually pretty awesome. It is. Nikki says it's really kind of a pick up and deliver game, and she really kind of hit it on the head. I mean, there's more elements to it than that, but it is quite neat. And there's the whole, you have your cards that have special powers, but they're also a poker hand where you'll play a Texas Hold'em style where there'll be 3 cards. I guess it's 3. It's more. That's more than we have in Texas Hold'em. But there's 3 cards that you play with, and then what you have in your hand. We didn't have that come up as much as I would have liked to have had it come up as far as the poker playing, but it's still really, really fun. Pretty fantastic theme. I love the storytelling elements. There's these things that happen when people complete certain things, and then you get to read the card, and it's more kind of story stuff that's fun. It's not any kind of looped. It's not kind of an story arc. It's just the elements of the cards that you have. It's really, really clever and really beautiful production on it for sure.
Yeah, the artwork just pops. I mean, the art, really cool.
Everything about it really looks nice.
So is it like Red Dead Redemption, the board game? Like, it's open sandbox, as I recall.
Yeah,
you can kind of just do whatever you want.
You do. You go around to the different locations. You decide if you're going to rustle cattle or if you're going to mine. Or, there's a quarry or a mine or whatever that you're trying to dig for gold. and then you're training that in to get victory points and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely. It's sitting here ready for me to play. I am excited to play. I have too many games to play. This is the problem we all have. I just like.
You need to play it before the top 10 video.
I know. I'm gonna try. Actually, I'm gonna try to do a Tuesday night game night. So I will do that.
So what have you been playing then?
Oh yeah, me. Sorry. So I just played two really of the heaviest games that came out this year. I think. First one was Underwater Cities, which I was pretty happy with. I really liked it. I felt it was a little too long for me. Like I like a little bit of a quicker turn rate. That's my only negative. It's fantastic though. It's really exciting.
Play 3 players.
Yeah, we played 4, and that kind of like I was definitely like I'm gonna play my turn if no one takes my spot. You know, like that, and that's not a diss on the game. It's just that's my kind of feeling. Like I'm ready to play, but then when it comes around to me and someone took my spot, then I have to rethink my turn. However, Teotihuacan was the other heavy game I played, which I want to talk about more, which I really loved, and I felt it has such a smooth turn. Like we were thinking it was going to be a pretty long game, and it was really not. Your turns are very quick. It's very tactical. And I know a lot of people compare it to Tzolk'in with the worker placement stuff, but there's no worker placement in this game as I can really call it. It's a rondel. So you're moving dice around the board, and every time you do an action, those dice get more powerful, which I think has been done in Praetor, the board game. So I don't get the comparisons to Tzolk'in, except for the theme. So if you didn't like Tzolk'in, you probably will like Teotihuacan. I thought it was really, really awesome. And I felt the turns are so quick and so tactical that my turn came around, I'm like, okay, I can go here, here, here. I'll pick which one was the best for me at the time. And you could do a little bit of long-term planning. But I really like the flow of it, and the theme is great, and it just felt like we were really accomplishing a lot in the game. Everything you did, like, sort of accomplished a little bit more toward your end goal. And it's a point salad game. So our scores were like in the 200s because we just got so many points. This was a 3-player game. That might be a little, less points depending on how many players you play, but really enjoyed it, and I want to play that again real soon. But I got all these other games over here, so I don't know. I'm gonna have to decide before the end of the year what else to prioritize.
Yeah, I got to play it at Dice Tower Con, and I just have been thinking about it since July, since I played it. And I think it'll be a top game for a lot of people for this year, or in the top of their collection. Because it's really, really good. And the board can be changed every time you play. You can set it up differently. I mean, there's just so much replay here. There's
a lot of replay. There's a lot of variable pieces that come out. It's going to be a top 10 game on many people's lists for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's just sold out already, unfortunately. I had read that it already had sold out at distribution, or very close to. So I hope they have a reprint coming, because I think they're going to sell a lot.
They do have a reprint that I believe is already in production, and now the NSKN is merged with Board&Dice. It will now have the Board&Dice logo on the reprint that's underway. But I don't know an expected delivery date.
Probably not. It's probably not going to be soon enough to make people, like, when all the reviews hit, which I think they're already starting. I haven't really been keeping track of the reviews for it, but I bet they're going to be positive. So they have a hit for sure. And that'll be a hit for years to come. And I think it could be expanded. I could see some things there, but it's very nice. I really liked it. Definitely going to be in my top 10. Spoiler. So yeah, Eric, what have you been playing? I know not much. You said you were playing some old favorites, but
December is kind of, I already talked about some things. So at PAX Unplugged, I played Trick and Trouble. So this is an older Japanese game from, I think, 2014 by designer Fuka Toru. And
I have it right here.
Frosted Games. Hey, Steph's got it too. Frosted Games has a new edition. It is oddly a 3-player only cooperative trick-taking game. So that all has to come together, and so you have to be fans of co-ops and trick-taking and have exactly 3 players. And what you are doing is you're laying out 5 goal cards. You each have a hand of 5 cards, which are mostly single colors, but sometimes double colors or even triple colors. And you're going to play a trick-taking game. You have to follow the suit if possible. And after each player plays, you see if you've achieved goals that are on the table. And if you have, you score them and you turn up new goals, and everyone draws a new card. So you have 5 cards in your hand. And eventually you're going to play all 27 cards. And there's some passing you can do, and you can shuffle goals in and out, and you just see how high a score you can get. And it's a very different take on trick taking, because usually you do not do cooperative trick taking. It's every person for themselves, or maybe with a teammate. And this switches it a lot, because now you're just trying to pass information to the person solely by passing a card or by swapping out goals for when it's your turn to lead. And hopefully people can follow the right way and you can score things. So it's just a very different experience.
I really enjoyed it. I played it at just before Essen and had a really great time. I think it's a neat idea. I wish I'd played the original just so I could have been playing it for all this time. It's really cool.
Is it easily available? Can you buy it online, or
it's from
you have to order it special?
It's Frosted Games.
Okay.
Frosted Games has it out in Europe, and I believe we're going to get some for the BGG store, just because we've carried the Brett Spiel Advent Calendar from Frosted for 4 years now. So we have a relationship with them, and right now there is 0 distribution in the US, as far as I know, for this title.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's a really clever game. I really like this one.
I don't know. Maybe we can get some.
Everybody's been playing so much, but there was a big topic of discussion we had last week that was mostly on Twitter, I think, right? And Reddit.
It seemed to be. Yes.
It was, I don't know who wrote it, but do we know who wrote it?
Dinesh Vatvani had published it.
Right. And why don't you explain what it was, Eric, since you suggested this topic for this week?
Okay. So the topic of his article is a 2-part article where he downloaded tons of data from BGG and then was classifying games based on their complexity, their weight, their ratings, their mechanisms, all sorts of different aspects of it, leading up to the second part of the person's article where they were talking about complexity bias on BGG, which, when you hear that, sounds like BGG itself has a bias towards complex games, although the author makes it clear that it's really just a factor of our user base. People who spend a lot of time writing about games tend to favor complex games. I don't think that's necessarily a surprise for anyone. Just that if you play games very casually, you probably don't go online and rate them. You just play them. But people who tend to have that personality where they really dig into things tend to favor complex games, and those games tend to be rated higher. And so those end up more on the top 100 list. So what this author was suggesting is a way to account for the complexity bias and retilt the scales, and has made a new top 100, which is kind of interesting to look at, just because it just gives you a different way to imagine that subject. So I don't know if...
And the games that kind of got rebalanced up into the top 100, it wasn't like... it wasn't like Monopoly shot to number 1 or something. They were all games that were still kind of in our hobby. They just, some of the lighter fare or casual games got a bit more of a boost compared to, I don't know, like a Twilight Struggle or something.
Yeah. And it's balanced out. That the person tried to approximate BGG's rating system. And it's interesting because Pandemic Legacy Season 1, which is number 2, moved up to number 1. That did not get really affected at all. But Codenames shot up to number 2, which in a way makes perfect sense because Codenames is incredible. It's so good. And then Seven Wonders Duel is number 3. And Gloomhaven is still number 4 because the rating is incredibly high, but it's with a niche audience compared to the games with a broader appeal, such as Codenames.
Yeah.
Or Crokinole, which is number 5.
Takeaway. Yeah. I think that was the big takeaway, was the broader appeal games should be ranked higher. That was the opinion of the author, I think.
Yes.
And I kind of disagree with that. Because, broader appeal games are good and fun to play, but they're not usually the games that people who use BGG really want to play all the time, right? Since our rating system is more like, if you follow the guidelines of the BoardGameGeek rating system, your 10 is the game you'll always want to play. It's one of my favorite games. It's that's typically, hopefully, what people use it for. But I understand that people rank things relatively. Like, this is my 10 and this is my 1. You know, like games they hate, they put at a 1. Even though if they probably play it, which would typically be like a 5, they'll probably put it down in the lower numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's representative of the user base, right? And I think you said something interesting on Twitter, Eric, like if the millions and millions of other people who play board games in the world, like we don't say Board Game Geek is fully representational of the entire board game world,
right?
That those games would be high because they'd be rated high if the whole world used Board Game Geek, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the ratings represent the user base, which is what the user says. And it's more just if you had more people on BGG, it's hard because, of course, if you could think of sales dollars as a rating system. And if you do that, you would have a very different number 1 game than you do right now.
Yeah, Cards Against Humanity would be number 1.
Yeah, it's...
or Monopoly.
Or Monopoly, of course. It's hard to, that's not really the rating system, but of course, in one way it is because people like the game enough they spend money on it. And so you go out and you see what are people actually spending money on. Maybe that's the best game. That's a different way to think of it. So I don't know. It's interesting just because you've talked about this a little bit where the choices you have made in 2000 still kind of resonate through BGG today. And so, what would happen if we took, if all the ratings were eliminated and then people started rating things once again? What would happen in a year's time?
Let's find out tomorrow. We're pushing the button.
That's right. You do a reset.
Surprise, everyone.
I don't know if it'd be possible to, to skim the data that way, because now at least comments have a date on them of when the comment was made. And I think when the rating was made. And so you could say, well, if we only look at the ratings for the past 4 years, what's the top 100? I don't know. It's all curious stuff like that.
I feel like we could do more data mining type things like that instead of just wiping clean, where people could kind of come up with their own, like, because, I think there's been like thousands of topics about the ratings discussion on BGG. Like there's one every week, almost without fail.
Yeah. The people who don't log in, if they haven't logged in 5 years, then their rating should be removed because clearly they're somehow invalid.
Your opinions are no longer valued after a certain amount of time.
I don't know. They want fresh takes.
I think another thing people don't realize is that we have rating systems for a lot of different of the domains on BGG. So there's a family game ranking. And I don't know if people... I'm sure this author may have realized that, but maybe not. That if we already have sort of like a user-generated... What kind of game is this? Is it strategy? Is it family? Is it party? Is it... those kinds of games. And then we also have that as a ranking system. Now, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world to find on BGG, but it is there because at the top of every game, it'll say family number 1.
Right.
Like Codenames, probably. I don't know if Codenames is actually the top one, but I think it is. So when you click on that, it'll take you to the rankings of the family games.
Yeah.
So we kind of already do something like that. Those wider appeal games already have their own list, but I think people want that one list of like, what's the best game in the world? And I don't know.
Yeah, that's human nature.
Yeah.
They're looking for the almighty list.
Yeah.
No, I mean, their opinions are still valid.
Of course.
It doesn't matter. You can go and look at movie ratings and book reviews from decades ago, and they will still have relevance when looking at particular works of art. So
a lot of my top 10 games are lighter games. They're not. There's definitely some deeper ones, but not in the level of like Gloomhaven. Not that I wouldn't give Gloomhaven a 10. I haven't played it yet though to even judge it. But I think that there's definitely the buzz about games like that. That's another thing that maybe they're not taking into account. Like a ton of people bought Gloomhaven this last year. That is why it has really skyrocketed. They're all excited about it, and they put a lot of money into it too. Mentioning about what they've spent, like Eric said. So, there's definitely lots of things that influence how you rank games. Yeah, there's lots of biases in game rankings. We just did it for fun one year. Like I think I forget the day I wrote that code. I'm like, what would be cool? And then here we are, 15 years later, still having repercussions of the decision that was made on that day back in
2004.
And it's pretty neat that someone took a lot of time and a lot of thought to put together this study. You know, what you think of the study one way or the other is for each person to decide, but that someone took the information in a very serious way and tried to be kind of contemplative about it. I think that's interesting. I hope to see more of that kind of analysis.
That falls in the category of like the things I have on my list to write about, but there's a lot of stuff there as I'm clearing out my inbox for the year.
It was definitely an interesting experiment. It caused a big kerfuffle. I mean, there's definitely been other people who have done alternative rankings, but I guess since it was Twitter and Reddit, it got a way bigger audience.
It's hard to imagine that overlap of, hundreds of thousands of ratings from piling that all up. But I don't know. So
it's millions of ratings, actually.
Millions of ratings. Well,
yeah.
100,000 of users, I guess I was thinking.
And millions of users.
Yeah, okay. All right. What's a zero here or there?
Yeah.
Yeah. But sort of tied in with that, thinking of the news this week, so 2F Spiel has announced a recharged edition of Power Grid, which of course Power Grid has been out since 2004 in its current incarnation, right? If you go back to Funkenschlag for the initial edition, and then Power Grid for the second one that's been out 15 years now, or at least next year when they release a slightly tweaked version where it accounts for changes in terminology and it tries to clarify everything because there's been lots of expansions for it and they're trying to have everything work properly and flow properly. So it eliminates all sorts of questions. So it's pretty much the Power Grid base game, but somewhat tweaked. So
yeah, some elements from Power Grid Deluxe, some things from the Power Grid Fast Forward deck or whatever, Fabled deck. They have elements that are going to be in the new edition as well.
So we have that, and we also have the introduction or announcement of Glen More 2, which takes Glen More, released in, I believe, 2010, and now there's going to be a second edition where that has been tweaked a lot. And now you cannot play the original Glen More with the new Glen More 2 just because rules changes have had impacts on the tiles that are included with the flow of that, and there's some back and forth on that. And then there's a set of expansions as well that you can incorporate one or more expansions, although Matthias Kramer said, really, just do one. Like maybe two at the most. Don't kill yourself. Because they add all sorts of different elements to the gameplay. And so you think back on the introduction of new, older games, and how did they stand up over time when you're looking at the rankings for them? I don't know. It's interesting to think about if the game was announced today, where would it be? Or where would it be in a year's time with the market the way it is now, rather than having this history to them? So I don't know. It's interesting just because there's definite, if you want to look at other samples of bias in the rating system, it is a second edition game where they inevitably rank higher than the first edition because if you hate the first edition, you're probably not going to play the second one and put a bad rating on it. So it's all the fans of it leading up to a better rating.
Through the Ages and
War of the Ring
with the multiple editions all being in the top 100, and the people who like those games are going to rate those games and they're going to rate them high, right? And then a lot of people might not ever even play those games, so they might not get a lower rating because, well, it's too complicated. I'm not going to play it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't like it the first time. How much are they changing it, to address all the things I didn't like about it?
No, I'm excited for Glen More too. I really like, Time Track. Best mechanicism out there. So our final segment before we wrap it up for the year is Kickstarter, which has had a huge impact this year. There's no doubting Kickstarter has a big influence on the board game industry. The one that caught my eye this week is Tainted Grail, which is by the makers of War of the Ring, which is sort of a very dark King Arthurian setting with a lot of story, like a big thick book and lots of cards and lots of things, lots of theme. I don't know where it's at. It's doing hugely. So check that out before the end of the year.
£2.5 million.
Oh, is that all?
I think it got that in the first day. Like it crossed 2 million in the first day. Is this the one by Awakened Realms?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I mean, in US dollars, it's almost 3.4 million. So
Wow.
Definitely caught my eye. I ordered it, pre-ordered. I'm not sure how long it'll be before it comes out. Probably a year, I'm guessing. But that'll be... It's interesting in the Kickstarters, when they start showing up at my house, I remember like, oh yeah, I remember back in that 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago. And it's like, kind of like, it's weird. Like sometimes they lose their effectiveness, like, or their excitement, because you had to wait so long for it and you kind of forgot about it. But this one I think will probably be up there when it comes out. The theme looked great. It's very dark. There's adult themes in there by, like some of the most sensitive themes you can think of. And the game looks pretty interesting, and it's an experience game with a little bit of Euro resource management built into it. So very cool. Eric, I know you had one more Kickstarter thing, and then we'll wrap it up.
yeah, what caught my eye is this game Cultistorm. It's by a Hungarian publisher. It's their first project on Kickstarter, and I believe their first game release from this specific company, although I've run into the people involved with it before. They had the game, they were demoing at Spiel 18, and they kept saying, oh, you should come look at it, come look at it. Of course, people trying to get advance. It delves into Lovecraftian themes, as so many games do. But what's interesting as well, they're tying in the game project as well as a flash fiction project. So you have, I believe, 400 short stories about characters and locations that you can read prior to going somewhere, I guess, for a thematic setting. There's also a longer short story collection. I believe there's also there's songs related to it. This weird multimedia project covering lots of different creative grounds, and it will come in a plastic box with raised tentacles and eyeballs on it. So it has everything that you could want. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or not want. Who knows?
That's right. Then that leads to like, this is going to fit on my shelf. Nothing's going to balance on top of it. Yeah. Cause all sorts of issues.
It's supposed to sit on a pedestal.
I guess. Above your altar. And it's all you have with a spotlight shining on it. So the eyeballs stand out really well.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Board Game Geek Show and our final episode of the year. I just wanted to thank everybody for watching. This is kind of a new thing for BGG. We started it at the beginning of the year. We've done 1 year now of episodes. Probably not a full year, right? When did we start?
Pretty close.
Pretty early, but
It's
not.
close.
Yeah, pretty close. So what I'd really like is your feedback. Like, really seriously, what do you think about this show? Do you enjoy watching it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What can we change? What would you like to see? We really want to kind of hear from you, people who are watching. And we'll kind of maybe modify the show next year. So please write to us at bggshow@boardgamegeek.com. And I'd like to thank all of you, my lovely co-hosts, for joining us every couple weeks. And I think it's been a really fun year.
Cool. Well, I've been having fun doing it.
Yeah, it's been a great excuse to get together, and I think it'd be great to hear from people who watch and hear their suggestions about what we can do to make it better.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
So on behalf of my lovely co-hosts and myself, I'd like to wish you a happy holidays and a fabulous new year. Play lots of games. Thank you, Steph Hodge. Thank you, Rodney Smith. Thank you, Lincoln Damerst. And thank you, W. Eric Martin.
Thank you, Scott Alden.
Thank you, Scott Alden.
We'll see you next year.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.